Good morning. I'd like to welcome you guys to DCC. Thank you so much for being with us today. If you are a guest with us, whatever it was that brought you here, if it was a friend, a family member, you saw something online, if it's because of this giving campaign and something that has, you're somehow associated with that, we're just grateful that you're here, whatever brought you here today. It's a very good day. It's a very exciting day considering what we're going to watch and what we're going to talk about. We're in the final part of a 3-week series titled Be Rich, and we are discussing what it means to act and live a life full of generosity. Now, as mentioned, our last 2 weeks of giving went directly 100% into the needs of our local community. So no one in this church was getting any money, no electric bills, ministry efforts, whatever that might look like. It went directly back into the community. So this was the giving or the tithing on October the 20th and on October the 27th. Now, our giving on average, and I think this is pretty cool, our giving on average actually went up about $2,000 beyond the norm, meaning that some of you gave more, or some of you gave for the first time. So I think that is pretty cool. So we still use that $2,000 to continue to pour out. That doesn't mean that, we got $2,000 extra dollars, so now let's pay some bills at the church and take care of that. We actually added the Resource Center at Adams Middle School. We wrote them a check. We wrote a check for the Family Resources Center at Prestonsburg High School, and then we also gave more to I think we doubled the check for the East Kentucky House of Hope, which is the homeless shelter. So that's what we actually use with the extra, and I'll talk a little bit more about the other giving that we've already talked about the last few weeks as well. So today what we want to do is we want to show the fruit of your giving and kind of what that looks like. It's what I call kingdom seeds, which is an absolutely wonderful thing. And to show you what a biblical life of generosity actually looks like. That it's not something that just because we talk about being rich or just because we talk about the importance of giving for a couple of weeks, that it's not something that we refuse to continue in our lives. It's that important, it's that critical, and that's something that we all really need to understand. So I want to return to a passage that we've been in the last 3 weeks that what's going on here is Paul is writing something called a pastoral letter. He only has 3 of these. Most of these are letters to churches, but he writes 2 to Timothy, and then he writes 1 to Titus. This is toward the end of his first letter to Timothy, so he's talking to this young pastor, and this is what he has to say. As for those who are in the present age are rich, command them not to be haughty or to be arrogant with their money. In the last 3 weeks, we've talked about this concept of the rich not being people who we would generally consider to be wealthy, but actually being every single person that is in here right now. I don't care how little you may feel that you have, every person in here falls into the top 10% of wage earners in the world. Now, if you earn $37,000 a year as an individual, or maybe within your marriage, then you're obviously in that category as well. You fall into the top 1% of wage earners in the world. So we're all rich. That's the point that I'm trying to make. As for those who are in this present age are rich, command them not to be arrogant or haughty, or to set their hopes on the uncertainty, the complete unpredictability of riches, but rather on God, who richly provides us with everything for our enjoyment. They are, and this is what we looked at last week, we specifically focused on verse 18. They are to do good, to be rich in good works, generous, and ready to share. That was our focus last week. Thus storing up for themselves the treasure of a good foundation for the future, so that they may take hold of the life that really is. So last week what we did is we really focused in on generosity in verse 18. And today we want to close with what the good life or the true life is actually supposed to look like. When we looked at verse 18 last week, what I tried to do was use the Greek, specifically what Paul was saying, and then paraphrase for you how we were supposed to live. And it's radical. All right, it's very different than the way that most of us look at living. And this is kind of how I said it. So those 4 commands, this is what they are. Work as hard as you can at performing good deeds with the resources God has given you. Again, I'm not talking about people with 6 or 7 figure incomes. We're talking about every single person that is in here right now that has resources. Though some of us may have a lot of resources and some of us may have fewer resources, we all have resources that can be used. Put your whole heart into using those resources, your time and your money, to leave people in better shape than they were before you acted on their behalf. You should be elated, thrilled, and euphoric, or you should be really happy about every opportunity that you have to give. You should be excited about every opportunity that presents itself for you to be generous in your life. And I know that this is not typically the way that we look at life, but this is very specifically what we are commanded to do. Not pastors, not people in church leadership, not elders or deacons, or however you want to slice this. Every single person that calls themselves a follower of Jesus is supposed to look at life in this way. All right? But in order for me to get there, I must view my resources, everything that I have at 940 Mays Branch, as well as everything that I could have in the bank or anything like that. I must look at my resources as temporary, unimportant, and also usable by others. And this is the most radical part. Most importantly, I must renounce all personal ownership of everything. So I know that this is not the American way. And I know that this is not what you've been taught. And I know that what you've been told since you were a kid or since you started to cut your teeth on politics, what is mine, what I have earned belongs to me. But Jesus is actually saying something very different. Jesus is saying that if we see a person that is in need and we have the ability to meet that need through the local church or on our own, if we're riding down the road, we have an obligation or a responsibility to meet that need. That doesn't mean that we're taking food out of our kids' mouths. It doesn't mean that we're not doing, things to make sure that we have shelter over our own heads. But it does mean that we all, in a lot of cases, have a little bit more often that we can help with. This is specifically what Paul is saying, and this is what this leads up to in verse 19, the last verse, and this is the New Living Translation. By doing this, by making these commitments in our lives, by not simply seeing them as words on a page, but by making these commitments in our lives, we are storing up treasure as a good foundation for the future so that they may experience true life. They may understand the actual essence of why we're here and what life actually means. So this is the critical thing that I want you guys to understand today. There is a way that this is supposed to look as far as how we spend our money and how we use our resources. So this is what we need to know today. By giving away temporary treasure, we are storing up permanent treasure. So by understanding that we may have a lot of an attachment, and this is the thing, like a lot of this has nothing to do with wealth. Any hoarders in here? Like some of you need, only 3 people are honest enough to say that, all right? But your house is just absolutely stacked full of stuff, and a lot of the reason that you tend to have a lot of these things is because you have a psychological attachment to a lot of the things in your life. So we're not just talking necessarily about the money that's constantly coming in and being greedy with that. We're talking about the things that you can actually get rid of that other people can use. And you know that this doesn't necessarily always apply to just wealthy people as we understand wealthy people. It applies to pretty much all of us. So by giving away temporary treasure, understanding that everything here has a temporary nature, we are actually storing up permanent treasure. Now, this seems easy enough to understand. It seems like something that we should get. It seems like something, if we follow Jesus long enough, that we should be able to say, I understand that what I have here is not going to last forever. I understand, like we said last week, that you've never seen a hearse pulling a U-Haul, that we're not taking any of the things that we have here to the next life. So we understand that. We get that. but we still really struggle with this concept. And I think that there's a couple reasons that we do. And the first is this: we prefer a foundation that we can build. As much as we want to tell ourselves that we've turned our lives over, as much as we want to tell ourselves that we are followers of Jesus, we don't care about anything else, this is the direction that our lives are going, we prefer a foundation we can build. All right, we still have a desire to hold on to a certain level of control in our lives, and it makes it impossible for us to build up this foundation that we're supposed to have. In essence, Jesus says it in this way. He says that there is a man who builds on sand, and there is a man who builds on stone. And the reality is that a lot of us are continuing over and over again to build on sand instead of to build on stone, therefore not earning or getting these permanent treasures that we're talking about. So we prefer a foundation that we can build. But also, we prefer what we can see over what we can't see. All right, so when I think about the car that I could purchase, that's something that I can see. That's something that when I even think about, I start to enjoy. When we think about the new house, when we think about all of the things that we buy for our children, I mean, is it a newsflash or a reality to any of us in here that the money that we spend on our kids' birthdays are absolutely ridiculous? Husbands, start nudging your wives right now. That's what you're supposed to be doing. No, you're afraid of getting in trouble. Okay. But like all of the money that we pour into our children, all of the things that we think that they need are not necessarily needs. They are things that we want them to have. What about all these online purchases? You know, like I'm not a big spender. I don't spend a ton of money. But whenever I come home sometimes and I see stuff on our porch, I'm like, what has Beth ordered now? Like we've got 15 little packages. And then she says the same thing to me when she goes to the mailbox. She's like, a book came, another book came, another book came. And it's like all of these purchases, all of these small things that we buy over and over again. These are things that we can see. These are things that we can touch. But whenever we think about the permanent, whenever we think about the eternal, when we think about taking what we have and giving it away, it's very scary. And it's very scary because we don't know what the eternal looks like. We don't know what it looks like to actually build a really strong foundation that is here. So here's something important to understand. Treasures that you keep for yourself are going to expire. That's the only way I know how to say it. They have an expiration date. But treasures that you give away will last forever. And for those of you that live very generous lives, for those of you that are regular givers, for those of you that if you see someone in need and you make sure that that need is met, for those of you that have been giving for years and years to the local church and you reap the benefits as a result of that, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And you see the importance of this and you understand it in your life. So if I can convince you that the foundation that you are building on, the way that you are using your money for yourself, the things that you are convincing yourself that you need, if I can convince you that that foundation is shaky at best, like at absolute best, it's shaky, you can get a little bit closer to what it means to live a true life. You see, there are three ways that the New Testament identifies this word life. There is the first word, which is bios. It's where we get the word biology. Ology in Greek means to know. All right, so it means natural life. Every single person in here is a breathing, living organism. Second word for life is sahi. And what this comes from and where we get this is psychology. So we also have a thought life. All right, every single person in here, I hope, to some degree, has a thought life. There are patterns up here. So you're a living, breathing, physical organism with a thought life. But then there is Zoe. So for any of you that have named your kids Zoe, or you know a Zoe, This is where this comes from. It means abundant life. Even now, there's this big West Coast trend of even Zoe churches. It's called Zoe Church. All right? Zoe means life, but it means abundant life. It means eternal life. It means that there is a specific, beyond the psychological and beyond the biological, there is a life. John 10:10, I've come that you may have life and have it more abundantly. Zoe. It means that there is this exception. There is this special life that you are supposed to be able to walk into, and that is exactly what Paul is talking about right here. So you relax at home, you enjoy your things, and you convince yourself that this is life. When Paul is saying that there is actually a foundation that you are supposed to be building here that is going to continue into the next life, and it's very important that you have an understanding of what this means. All right, so again, our plan has not been for you guys to give for a couple weeks so you can get the warm fuzzies about everything great that DCC is doing in the local community. The desire is to build a lifestyle. The desire is to build a rhythm. The desire is to understand that you own absolutely nothing, but things flow through you as a result of being a follower of Jesus. And this is the challenge that I'm going to have for you guys today. So I'm going to show you the Be Rich campaign slide that I've showed you, we've talked about the last couple weeks. First, I want to mention this. We had a goal of 300 boxes for Operation Christmas Child. I've seen people leave with boxes after our first service, but for our first service, we had 283, so we will meet that goal. That's pretty cool, over 300 boxes for Operation Christmas Child. We have so far 39 volunteer hours, all right, so that's the volunteer hours that people are working at the places that we mentioned. And here are some of our giving efforts. I mentioned also with the extra giving that we did for the resource centers, but needs are met in the following areas. The first are our 2 food pantries. All right, so needs in those 2 directions. Middle Creek Food Pantry, which is kind of on the Floyd County, Magoffin County line. And then right down the road from us, a block away, Fishes and Loaves. We talked about, we wrote checks for both of those organizations for their 2020 budget. School supplies for Stumbo Elementary. And if you go down to the bottom, I want to take you there as well. Rewards for elementary students at Stumbo Elementary. And those will be explained in the video that we're going to share. If you go back up to the third part, tools for home repairs, and then the second part there, tools for local building projects. That's through Hand in Hand. Thought Lowe's is going to pull in, and there's going to be this truckload of tools. It's just going to be absolutely incredible. Well, between the saw and everything else, Alex looked at that truck, came open, and they were just all pushed to the end. You'll see here in just a second, because tools are very expensive. But we were able to provide what they need to take care of some of the things that you guys are going to see on this video that's really, really cool. The homeless shelter needs the Eastern Kentucky House of Hope. We wrote a check for them, and then we doubled that check whenever we recognized we had some stuff left over. It was also very cool the other night. Beth and I went to the Dancing for the Shelter event, and I know they raised a lot of money for that. It was great to see the community pitch in for that. Recreation for at-risk youth. This was through Mountain Comp, and I can't remember the specific name of the organization within there, but it'll say it here on this video. But when I talked to Mary Reffett, she said the kids really need some recreational stuff so that they can also have for reward time. We bought them 2 Nintendo Switches because she suggested that because the video games aren't really violent. She talked about Mario Kart and stuff like that. And it's also pretty gender neutral. Boys and girls can both enjoy it. So what we want to do is we want to show you, it's about 16 minutes long, with the sound. Some parts are a little bit louder than others. We did our absolutely best. Leslie Nelson did an absolutely incredible job putting this video together. But I want you guys to understand, I don't simply look at this as a DCC leadership thing like what we did, but I want you guys the last 2 weeks, and for those of you that are regular givers, regular tithers, to enjoy this because this is where your money is going.
My name is Sister Judy Younger. I'm the priest here at St. James. And my role with the pantry, and we were talking about that this morning, is peacemaker. Ron is the site manager. Eileen is in charge of the supervision. My role is to visit with the folks and do pastorally whatever comes up during the day, either with the volunteers or with the participants. In 2019, from January to September, we served 3,946 people. Because we say families, but of course those families come once a month. But the people and the meals that we serve are reported to the government and to our God's Pantry. And then the meals that were served in 2019 from January to September was 1,342 meals.
1,000 pounds. So a lot of this, most of this on this wall came from standards. By the end of the month, this will all be clean. That's the way it usually is. Right. So here's what we get from God's hand. And over here. I've ordered extra because the holidays coming up. We always have more people. That's just a given. And they need more food. So we try to order a little extra, which I'm going to do. And so we've done good on that part. With you guys' other part, you helped get some of this. Trust me, you did.
Yes. Hi, Chastity Brown from Destination Community Church. We want to give you a check to help with all of your.
Oh my gosh.
That really does. That really does. Well, thank you so much.
My name is John Morse, and the Executive Director of God's Appalachian Partnership, and came here in 2013. Me and my wife were called into full-time ministry and missions, but we kind of felt full-time missions was always something you do overseas, and that was our desire through college and through seminary. And then God then began giving us a passion and desire in '99 of begin to seeing our homeland, where we were born and raised, as a mission field. And it was, so we have 4 main ministry programs: resource distribution ministry, home repairs ministry, Bible study and evangelism, which everything we do is about sharing the gospel, but some things is just about sharing the gospel, or Bible studies. And then our 4th one is educational classes. And we use those as tools to be able to share the gospel also. And we're very excited about this possibility of getting these sewing machines so that we can begin the new year teaching sewing classes to people, to be able to teach them first of all some life skills, so some things that they can use within their own household, to help them to have their own resources stretch farther throughout the month, but also to be able to make some things that maybe they could sell to have a little income. But I think one of the greatest things that comes from this, from a lot of our life skill classes that we teach, is that when people see things that they accomplish and that they have made, it just boosts their self-esteem, and they get self-worth and self-value. And we're so excited about that, because it's a great leeway to begin sharing the gospel and presenting the gospel of how worthy they are in God's eyes. Because many of our people, they've just lost all hope, and they feel like they're stuck in a cycle of hopelessness. And so when they see something that they have made with their own hands or created, and they begin to take pride in something that they can do, we see that their whole outlook of life begins to change and stuff. And then it's a very entering point that we begin to share the gospel with them. So this is our distribution area where we serve all of our families. We schedule about 80 every month. Everything has points on it based upon their income and family household. They're able to get so many points worth of food, anywhere from 40 up to 350 points worth of food. And they're able to get 25 up to 60 points worth of personal hygiene and cleaning products on this side.
Amy McCausland. I am the administrative assistant at Hand in Hand Ministries, and we have a home repair program that services local low-income families with home repairs, and we also have a food pantry that
I'm Jackie Sammons, and I'm a construction supervisor. We keep our lumber and stuff up here, like
Okay.
for job sites, and then, like at the end of the year, we have like lumber that we can go get, and we stock it in here for like the next year.
Gotcha. So
And
what?
then, like whenever we start, we can open the doors right here. We just back our trucks up and mostly we go out and we'll like build handicap ramps and like people that can't afford it, you know, we go in and remodel their houses, and a lot of them the floor's falling through, and we have to go in and put showers and new floors. A lot of new roofs go on. And a lot of times we have to put the roofs on before we can like do anything on the inside, because a lot of ours is roofs.
Now, how would you say, working with a lot of these kids and adults, what is their reaction a lot of times whenever they see this level of poverty and whenever they're around things that they're just not used to?
Well, first, like whenever we go out on the job sites, they're pretty much, they're surprised, pretty much. And a lot of them's like, they've never used a tool or nothing, and we train them and everything. We do like safety training before we do the job sites, and then we'll go in and let them use the saws and the drills. And by the end of the day, they don't want to leave. They just want to keep going and going and going. They're awesome girls.
My name is Elizabeth Rife. I'm the program facilitator here at the East Kentucky House of Hope. So what we do here is we have 6 beds for men and 6 for women. And we provide them shelter in exchange for providing mental health services and resources that they need to get back on their feet. The clients often come in and they don't have any clothing, no personal hygiene products. They lack transportation, they lack financial and family supports. So we provide mental health services such as individual therapies, cognitive behavioral therapies, daily living skills that we teach them to use on a daily basis, budgeting skills, and then we also link them with resources for housing, employment, or if they need to sign up on government assistance or anything like that. So we utilize our time with them as just a building block to get them back on their feet and self-sufficient. We are always very humbled and appreciative of any donations. The monies that we get from donations usually go towards filling up the freezers, food for the clients. It also goes for personal hygiene products, shampoo, conditioners, deodorants. We also have to have everyday items such as toilet paper, paper towels, and things like that the clients need. The clients often have to order birth certificates or get copies of their IDs to be able to apply for housing. So any form of donation can go a long way in just helping the clients get back on their feet.
All right, this is a check from Destination Community Church. Thank you so much.
Caitlin Hackworth, Youth Peer Support Specialist.
Mary Riffett, I'm a clinical social worker and the director of the program.
Linnea Howard, I am a therapist.
Okay, it's Juvenile Intervention Services Program, and what we do is provide in-home behavioral health services to children and their families. We work with the schools, we work with the court-designated workers, with the Cabinet Social Services. Sometimes we're contacted by grandparents, kids who have been exposed to trauma. Sometimes the symptoms from that and the behavioral disruptions don't happen until later, so sometimes we get referrals from just the parents. So in the schools do too. Okay, our primary targeted age group is 5 years old to 17. And the switches, they're small enough and they're portable enough so that when our therapists and our CSAs and our youth peer support are going out to the homes, it's something that we can use as like a reward that's small enough, because a lot of these kids don't have video games. Some of them don't even have cable or internet. You know, they'll have a TV, and many times they'll still be using the old VHS tapes. So this will allow us to kind of have just a fun reward. And then also they can integrate that into, especially with our teenage boys, they can integrate that into their therapeutic services. And even the girls, who doesn't like to play morning anymore. So they can take this out and use that. Kids sometimes, if they're distracted and they're moving and they're doing something, it's less uncomfortable for them to talk about things that are really upsetting, like big feelings that they're having. So that will allow them to integrate that while they're sitting there playing a game or something. They can actually be talking about therapy, and the kids don't even realize that, you know, hey, we're getting services.
On behalf of Destination Community Church, we'd like to donate these 2 Nintendo Switches. Thank you so much. So that you can use that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. You're very welcome. Yay!
It's so nice. Every time you see it, you just want to walk in the doors and have a great day. And it's so nice. And the teachers are so nice here that you always want to be a student here. Woo!
I'm Janie Watts, and I'm the assistant principal at Stonewall Elementary. We're located in Grethel, and we are a K-8 school, and we house Head Start. So we have about 350 kids. We have the highest free and reduced lunch rate in the district. So our kids are basically in poverty where we're at, but we don't use that as a barrier or an excuse. We do our best while they're in these walls to make sure that they have everything that they need to be successful, even though they may not have that at home or they may not have that the means to get it. We try to provide it for them here. The school supplies are needed at our school because, well, a lot of times at other places, teachers get a lot of donations. They get it from community, from businesses, or from parents. And where we're in such a small rural area, we don't have businesses that really take us under their wing and support us like other places. And we don't have a lot of parents that, you know, go above and beyond to give teachers what they need and to provide it for their kids. So our teachers, a lot of times, are using their own money to supply what we need. We're small, so we don't get as much funding as other schools, so it's hard for us as a school to supply it, and then it's a struggle for the parents to supply it when there's no businesses. So all that together, we just don't have a whole lot. So that's why we really need anything that we can get. And I know when I talked to you all, I had asked for just basic things like Clorox wipes and paper and pencil, or Germ-X, and even one of the big things, and I know when I talked to Alex about it, was Kleenexes, tissue. It's just not something that we get donated. The schools don't supply, and our kids need it. Obviously they need it, so it's something that comes out of our teachers' pockets, and it's a big help to have that burden off of them. So the ice machine and popcorn maker isn't something that we can buy out of general school funds. It's just not in our, what they call it, red book or regulations. We use the ice machine to make ices for the kids for rewards, and the popcorn machine also to make rewards for the kids. At the end of each month, we do an academic pep rally for our kids, and at that time we gather points. So if they participate in any of our spirit days, like today's camo day, they get a point for every kid that dresses up. They get so many points for having perfect attendance in their homeroom, and they get perfect attendance for giving back to the community and doing things like, right now our big push is pop tabs, and we're collecting those for the Ronald McDonald House. and we want to teach them to give back too. And so they earn those points, and then at the end of the month, whoever has the most points, they win what we call the Spirit Assembly, and we reward them with ices and popcorn and a movie.
Hey! Some stuff for you. The Destination Community Church has a check for your ice machine, school supplies, and popcorn machine.
Oh, thank you all so much. Our kids are going to love it.
Thank you, DCC.
And what we have, but we all are able to give. The second point here is percentage giving. And you know, the Old Testament talks about the tithe being 10%, but as New Testament givers, I'm not even talking about that. For some people, when you first start tithing or when you first start giving to others, I believe both are very important. You may start at 3 or 4%. Other people may be comfortable starting at 20%. I don't know what this looks like for your family. I just know that the importance, it has to be there. It has to be there. If it's what you're claiming as your belief system, as your way of life, it absolutely has to be there. And then there's progressive giving. And progressive giving is really whenever we've made giving a priority, we've made a decision to give a certain percentage of our giving, but because we start to see the blessings of God over and over again in our lives, and you will see that. If you're a regular giver, you start to progressively give more over time as more and more trust in your life falls into your relationship with Jesus. So again, the question that I left with you guys with, and as we conclude this series, what I want you to think about, are you rich? Do you understand what we're talking about when we talk about true life? Whenever the Apostle Paul talks about this to this young Timothy and is concluding this first letter to him, do you have an understanding of generosity in your life and that this life is not about you? Would you pray with me? Father, we come to you again this morning thanking you so much for continuing